I'll never forget the moment I saw him. It was just past dawn, that gray hour when the world feels suspended between night and day, and I was finishing my patrol near the base of the Cascade foothills. That's when I noticed him limping across the trail, a German shepherd, matted fur dark with blood, one leg dragging behind him. My heart dropped. In my 8 years as a canine handler, I'd seen injured dogs before, but there was something different about this one. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. He wasn't looking for help. He was looking for something else. I approached slowly, my hands raised, speaking in that soft voice we're trained to use. "Hey, buddy, it's okay. Let me help you." But as I reached for my radio to call animal control, he did something that stopped me cold. He barked, sharp, urgent, deliberate, then turned and started limping toward the mountain path. Then he stopped, looked back at me, barked again. Every instinct I had as a handler kicked in. This wasn't random. This was communication. I should have called it in right then. Protocol said so. But something in my gut told me this dog was trying to tell me something critical, something that couldn't wait for backup and paperwork. So I made a choice that would change everything. I grabbed my pack, checked my radio signal, and followed him. With each painful step he took, I felt my chest tighten. Blood marked the trail behind him. He should have collapsed by now, but he kept going, kept checking to make sure I was still there. The path grew steeper, rockier. My lungs burned, and still he climbed, this broken, determined creature, leading me higher into the wilderness. I remember thinking, what could possibly be so important that he'd push through this kind of pain? What was he trying to show me? If you're moved by stories of incredible animal courage and the bonds that connect us, please subscribe to our channel. Because what I found at the end of that trail changed my understanding of loyalty forever. The trees grew denser, the air thinner. And then, almost hidden by overgrown pines and morning mist, I saw it. A weathered cabin that shouldn't have been there. The dog collapsed at the door, his mission finally complete. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle, having no idea that opening that door would reveal a secret that had been hidden for years. The door creaked open, and what hit me first wasn't what I saw. It was what I heard. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence that felt wrong somehow, like the cabin itself was holding its breath. I knelt beside the shepherd, pressing my hand gently against his side. His heartbeat was weak but steady, and those intelligent eyes were fixed on the doorway, urging me forward, even as his body gave out. "I've got this, boy," I whispered, though I had no idea what this was yet. I stepped inside, my hand instinctively moving to my service weapon. The cabin was small, maybe 20 feet across, with rough-hewn walls and a single window so covered in grime it barely let in light. But it was the smell that made my stomach turn. Not decay, thank God, but something stale and desperate. Unwashed bodies. Fear. The kind of scent that clings to places where hope has been slowly dying. My eyes adjusted to the dimness, and that's when I saw the chain. Heavy, industrial, bolted to the floor in the corner. My training kicked in immediately. Human trafficking, kidnapping. My mind raced through possibilities, but then I saw the scattered dog bowls. 3 of them. Empty, and beside them, a pile of blankets that looked like they'd been arranged into beds. Small beds. My heart was hammering now as I moved deeper into the cabin, every floorboard groaning under my boots. There was a table with maps spread across it, marked with routes through the mountains. A calendar on the wall with dates circled in red. The last one was 2 days ago. And then I saw the photographs pinned beside it, and my blood ran cold. puppies. At least a dozen pictures of purebred puppies, German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, breeds worth thousands of dollars. But these weren't happy photos from a legitimate breeder. These were surveillance shots, documentation, and beneath them, scratched into the wood of the wall in what looked like desperate claw marks, were tally marks. Dozens of them. Someone had been counting something. Days? Dogs? I didn't know yet, but the desperation in those marks made my throat tight. I heard a sound then, a whimper so faint I almost missed it. It came from behind a door at the back of the cabin, partially hidden by a tattered curtain. Every instinct screamed at me to call for backup, to wait, to follow procedure. But that whimper came again, weaker this time, and I thought of the shepherd outside who'd climbed a mountain on a shattered leg to bring me here. My hand was shaking as I reached for that back door. The wood was newer than the rest of the cabin, reinforced with metal brackets. Someone had built this to keep something, or someone, inside. I could hear my own breathing, loud in my ears, as I turned the handle. It was unlocked. Why was it unlocked? The door swung open into darkness, and the smell hit me like a physical force. Animal waste, infection, fear. I fumbled for my flashlight, and when the beam cut through the black, I saw them. Cages. 6 metal crates stacked against the walls, and in 4 of them, pairs of eyes reflected back at me, wide with terror. Dogs. But not just any dogs. Breeding females, emaciated, trembling, some with fresh surgical scars from recent C-sections. This was a puppy mill, but worse. This was systematic, hidden, cruel beyond anything I'd seen. And in the corner, in the largest crate, I found her. A female German shepherd, the shepherd outside's mate, I realized immediately. They had the same markings, the same intelligent eyes. But she was in labor, and something was terribly wrong. I dropped to my knees beside her crate, my hands already reaching for the latch. She didn't growl, didn't bare her teeth. She just looked at me with eyes that held more exhaustion than any living thing should ever know. "It's okay, Mama," I heard myself saying, my voice cracking. "I'm here now. You're safe." But even as the words left my mouth, I knew she wasn't safe yet. None of them were. And I had no idea if help would arrive in time. My training as a K9 handler had taught me to read dogs like others read books. Every twitch of an ear, every shift in posture, every subtle change in breathing. They all told a story. And this mama was telling me she was dying. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. Her gums were pale when I gently checked them, and her body was hot with fever. She'd been in labor too long, and in these conditions, without veterinary care, I knew what that meant. I yanked open the crate door and carefully pulled her out, laying her on the cleanest blanket I could find. She was too weak to resist, which terrified me more than anything. A healthy dog in labor would be defensive, protective. But she just lay there, her sides heaving with contractions that were producing nothing. Dystocia. Difficult birth. One of the puppies was stuck, and if I couldn't help her soon, I'd lose them both. My fingers trembled as I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Handler Morrison. I need emergency veterinary support and backup at coordinates." I rattled off my GPS position, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have multiple dogs in critical condition. Possible illegal breeding operation. Send fish and wildlife and prepare for potential suspects in the area." The response crackled back. "Copy that, Morrison. Be advised, you're in a dead zone. We're routing units now, but terrain is difficult. ETA 45 minutes minimum." 45 minutes. I looked down at the shepherd, watched another contraction rack her body, and knew she didn't have 45 minutes. None of the knowledge from my canine first aid training seemed adequate for this. I'd been taught to stabilize, to wait for professionals, to not overstep. But there was no time for protocol now. I stripped off my jacket and rolled up my sleeves, my mind racing through everything I'd ever learned about canine anatomy. The male shepherd, her mate, had somehow dragged himself to the doorway of the back room. He lay there watching, his body spent, but his eyes alert. And I realized the full weight of what he'd done. He'd escaped this place, injured and desperate, and then climbed down a mountain to find help. Not for himself, for her, for their family. The intelligence, the loyalty, the sheer determination of it made my eyes burn with tears I couldn't afford to shed right now. "I see you, boy," I told him, my voice thick. "I understand. I won't let her down." I turned back to the mama and placed my hands gently on her swollen abdomen, feeling for position, for movement. There! I could feel a puppy, wedged wrong, too large, or turned sideways. My veterinary contact had once walked me through an emergency delivery over the phone for a police dog who'd gone into labor during a snowstorm. I closed my eyes, trying to remember every word. The mama whimpered, and I felt her pain like it was my own. "I know, sweetheart. I know it hurts. But you've been so strong. You've survived in this hell, and your mate fought his way out to save you. You don't give up now. Do you hear me? You fight." I needed her to understand, to trust me, because what I had to do next was going to hurt. I positioned myself, took a steadying breath, and began to examine her more thoroughly. Her body tensed, and from the doorway, her mate let out a low, warning growl, the first sound of aggression I'd heard from him. He was protecting her, even now, even from someone trying to help. "It's okay, boy. I promise. I'm trying to save her." I kept my voice calm, even, letting him read my intentions through my tone and body language. Dogs don't understand words the way we do. They understand energy, emotion, intent. And right now, I needed him to understand that every ounce of my being was focused on keeping his family alive. Slowly, deliberately, I showed him my hands, then returned to helping his mate. He watched for another long moment, then laid his head down on his paws, still watching, still ready, but granting me permission. The trust in that gesture nearly broke me. I worked carefully, my fingers guided by instinct and prayer as much as training, trying to reposition the stuck puppy. The mama panted, whined, but didn't snap at me. She understood too. And then, there, I felt movement, a shift. "Come on, baby," I whispered. "Come on." Minutes felt like hours. My back ached from crouching, my hands were cramping, and I was praying harder than I'd prayed in my entire life. And then, finally, I felt the puppy begin to move into the birth canal. The mama's eyes met mine, and I saw something in them I'll never forget. Hope. "That's it, Mama. Push. You can do this. Push." The puppy slid into my hands in a rush of fluid and membrane, tiny and limp and terrifyingly still. My heart seized. I cleared its airway with my finger, tore away the sac from its face, and began rubbing it vigorously with the blanket. Up and down its small body, stimulating circulation, willing it to breathe. "Come on, come on, come on," I chanted under my breath. The mama lifted her head slightly, watching, waiting, and I could feel the weight of her hope pressing down on me like a physical thing. Then, a gasp. A tiny, miraculous gasp, followed by the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. A puppy's cry, weak, but there, alive. I quickly placed the puppy at the mama's side, and she immediately began licking it with what little strength she had left, her maternal instincts overriding her exhaustion. I could have collapsed with relief, but there was no time. I could feel there were more puppies coming. Over the next 20 minutes, 3 more puppies were born, each one easier than the first, as if that stuck puppy had been a dam that, once broken, allowed life to flow through again. 4 tiny German shepherds, all breathing, all crying for their mother. The mama was exhausted but stable, and as I checked her vital signs again, I felt her pulse was stronger, her breathing more regular. She was going to make it. They were all going to make it. I sat back on my heels, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and emotion. And that's when I really looked around the room for the first time since I'd opened those cages. The other dogs, 3 females and 1 young male, probably kept for breeding, were watching me with expressions I'd learned to read over years of working with canines. Not just fear anymore. Something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. I opened each cage slowly, talking softly, giving them the choice to come out or stay. 2 emerged cautiously, sniffing the air, testing their freedom like they couldn't quite believe it was real. 1 remained in her crate, shaking so badly I could hear her collar rattling against the metal. The young male crept forward and went straight to the injured shepherd at the door, pressing against him like a son to a father. Maybe he was. And that's when I heard it. An engine. A vehicle, still distant, but getting closer. My hand went to my weapon instinctively as I moved to the grimy window and peered out. Not a police vehicle. Too soon for that. This was a beat-up pickup truck, faded blue, struggling up the mountain road that I hadn't even realized was there, hidden behind the trees. My blood turned to ice. Someone was coming back. The operators of this nightmare were returning, and I was alone in a remote cabin with 5 traumatized dogs, 4 newborn puppies, and 1 injured shepherd who could barely stand. The radio crackled. Backup was still 20 minutes out, maybe more. I had seconds to make a decision. Hide? Confront? Secure the dogs first? Every choice felt wrong, felt dangerous. I looked at the mama shepherd nursing her newborns, at her mate struggling to lift his head, at the other dogs just beginning to believe they might be safe. I thought about what would happen if whoever was in that truck got here and found me, and worse, what would happen to these dogs if I failed. The truck was getting louder. I could hear it clearly now, hear the engine straining, hear gravel crunching under tires. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of it breaking through the tree line, maybe 200 yards away and closing. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed my radio again. Dispatch, suspects approaching my location. 1 vehicle, unknown number of occupants. I have civilians. I caught myself. I have victims that cannot be moved, requesting immediate assistance. The response was garbled by static, but I caught enough. En route. Hold position. Officers, hold position. Right, like I had a choice. I wasn't leaving these dogs, not after everything they'd survived, not after what their brave, broken father had done to bring me here. I moved to the front door, positioning myself where I could see the approaching truck, but hopefully remain concealed in the cabin's shadows. My hand rested on my service weapon, though everything in me hoped I wouldn't have to use it. The truck rolled to a stop about 50 feet from the cabin, and the engine cut off. The sudden silence was deafening. I held my breath. Car doors opened, 2 of them, driver and passenger side. 2 suspects then. I strained to see through the dirty window. A man emerged from the driver's side, tall, maybe mid-50s, wearing work clothes and a baseball cap. He looked ordinary, like someone you'd pass at a hardware store without a second glance. That's what made it worse somehow. Evil doesn't always look like monsters. A woman came around from the passenger side, younger, anxious-looking, glancing around nervously. "Did you remember the antibiotics this time?" she called out. Her voice carried in the mountain air. "That last female is still infected, and if we lose another one—" "I got them!" The man cut her off sharply. "Stop worrying. We'll clean out the sick ones, keep the producers, and have the new litter ready for sale by next month. Those designer shepherd pups are going for $5,000 each now." My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth ache. $5,000. That's what they saw when they looked at those newborns I'd just helped bring into the world. Not lives. Not the miracle of birth I'd just witnessed. Just money. Just product. They were walking toward the cabin now, completely unaware of my presence. The man was carrying a paper bag, the antibiotics, presumably, and the woman had what looked like a ledger, probably for tracking their inventory, their dogs, their profits, their victims. I stepped out of the shadows and into the doorway, my badge visible on my belt, my hand near my weapon, but not on it yet. "That's far enough," I called out, my voice carrying every ounce of authority I could muster. "K9 unit, stop where you are and put your hands where I can see them." The effect was instantaneous. The woman gasped and dropped the ledger. The man froze, his face going through a rapid series of expressions: shock, calculation, and then something that made my blood run cold: defiance. His hand twitched toward his jacket pocket. "Don't," I said, my voice deadly calm now, my hand moving to my weapon. "Don't even think about it. Hands up, now. You're both under arrest for animal cruelty, operating an illegal breeding facility, and we'll see what else once I get a full inventory of this place." Behind me, from inside the cabin, I heard the male shepherd, the hero who'd started all of this, let out a low, rumbling growl. Even broken and bleeding, he was standing up for his family one last time. The man's eyes flicked from me to the cabin, and I saw the moment he understood. Someone had found his operation. Someone had saved his dogs. And his entire world was about to come crashing down. The man's hands slowly rose, but his eyes, cold, calculating, never left mine. "I think there's been a misunderstanding, officer," he said, his voice oily with false courtesy. "This is private property. Those are my dogs, legally purchased and registered. You're out of your jurisdiction up here." "Your dogs," I repeated, my voice flat. "The ones locked in cages barely big enough to turn around in? The nursing mother with a fever of at least 104? The male with a shattered leg who escaped and had to lead me up a mountain because he knew his family was dying?" Each word came out harder than the last. "Those dogs?" The woman started crying, not tears of remorse, I realized with disgust, but tears of self-pity. "We fed them," she whimpered. "We took care of them. Do you know how expensive dog food is? How much we invested?" Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe it was the adrenaline finally crashing, or maybe it was thinking about that brave shepherd collapsing at the door after climbing down a mountain on 3 legs. "You took care of them?" My voice rose, despite my training. "There's a female in there who nearly died giving birth because you couldn't be bothered to provide basic veterinary care. There are dogs so traumatized they're shaking in their cages, even with the doors open. And that male," my voice cracked, "that male loved his family so much, he did the impossible to save them. That's not care. That's torture." "We have rights," the man said, his jaw setting stubbornly. "You can't just—" "Keep your hands up and turn around," I commanded, cutting him off. "Both of you. On your knees. My hand was on my weapon now, and they must have seen in my face that I was done talking. The woman complied immediately, sobbing harder. The man hesitated, his eyes darting toward the truck, toward the tree line, calculating his odds. Don't, I warned. There's nowhere to run. Backup is 3 minutes out. It was a lie. They were still at least 15 minutes away. But he didn't know that. And even if you ran, do you really think I'm letting you disappear after what you've done to these animals? The distant sound of sirens suddenly echoed through the mountains, faint but real. Thank God. The man's shoulders sagged in defeat, and he dropped to his knees. I moved forward quickly, keeping my eyes on both of them as I pulled out the zip ties I carried for emergencies. First the man, he was the bigger threat, securing his wrists behind his back tightly enough to ensure he wasn't going anywhere. Then the woman, who was still crying and muttering about how they were going to lose everything. You already lost everything, I told her quietly as I secured her wrists. You lost your humanity when you decided these lives were worth less than your bank account. With both of them restrained and seated on the ground, I finally allowed myself to breathe. My legs felt weak, my hands were shaking, and I realized I'd been running on pure adrenaline for the past hour. The sirens were getting louder. 2 vehicles at least, maybe more. Help was almost here. I walked back to the cabin doorway and looked inside. The male shepherd was lying down again, his strength finally spent, but his eyes were alert and fixed on the 2 people restrained outside. The mama was curled around her 4 puppies, who were nursing contentedly, their tiny tails wagging. The other dogs had emerged from the back room and were huddled together near the wall, watching everything with wary eyes. It's over, I told them softly. It's really over. You're safe now. Sue, the first patrol car came into view, followed closely by an animal control van and, thank God, a mobile veterinary unit. I'd never been so relieved to see backup in my life. Officers poured out, immediately securing the scene and the suspects. The veterinarian, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, whom I'd worked with on previous cases, rushed toward me with her medical bag. How bad? She asked. All business. Male shepherd, severe leg trauma, blood loss, exhaustion. Female just gave birth to 4 puppies about 40 minutes ago. Had dystocia, running a fever. 4 more adults in various states of malnutrition and neglect. The words tumbled out clinically, but my voice was shaking. Dr. Chen put a hand on my shoulder. You did good, Morrison. Let me take it from here. She moved into the cabin with her team, and I heard her start issuing calm, professional instructions. IV fluids, antibiotics, stabilization protocols, the sounds of competent care replacing the sounds of suffering. One of the officers, Martinez, approached me. You okay, Morrison? You look like hell. I'm fine, I said automatically, then realized it was probably a lie. Actually, no, I'm not fine, but they will be. I gestured toward the cabin. That's what matters. Martinez glanced at the 2 suspects, now being loaded into separate patrol cars. We found evidence in their truck, breeding records, sales receipts, connections to at least 3 other operations across 2 states. This is bigger than just this cabin. You stumbled onto something major. I shook my head. I didn't stumble onto anything. That shepherd, the male, he found me. He brought me here. I looked back toward the cabin, where through the door I could see Dr. Chen carefully examining the injured hero. He saved them all. I just followed where he led. Still, Martinez said, if you hadn't listened, if you hadn't followed him, hadn't helped deliver those puppies, hadn't held the scene until we arrived, these dogs would be dead within a week, maybe less. That mama wouldn't have survived. The puppies would have died with her, and these bastards would have just gotten more dogs and started over. The weight of that settled over me. He was right. If I'd called animal control instead of following that injured dog up the mountain, if I'd waited for backup instead of going into that cabin, if I'd hesitated when the mama was in labor, any one of those decisions could have ended in tragedy. Dr. Chen emerged from the cabin, stripping off bloodied gloves. The male needs surgery, complex orthopedic work on that leg. The female needs antibiotics and monitoring, but she should recover fully. The puppies are strong, surprisingly healthy, given the circumstances. The other 4 adults will need dental work, nutritional rehabilitation, behavioral assessment, but they'll survive. She paused, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. Morrison, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen a lot of abuse cases. But what that male dog did, traveling that far, that injured, to get help, that's... She trailed off, shaking her head in wonder. Extraordinary, I finished quietly. Beyond extraordinary. That's the kind of intelligence and loyalty that most people don't believe animals are capable of. He's a hero. They all are for surviving this. They began transporting the dogs to the veterinary facility. Carefully, gently, with the kind of care these animals had probably never known. The male shepherd whined as they lifted him onto the stretcher, his eyes searching until they found me. I moved to his side immediately, placing my hand on his head. "You did it," I whispered, my throat tight with emotion. "You saved your family. All of them. You're the bravest soul I've ever met." His tail thumped once, weakly, against the stretcher, and I swear he understood every word. As they loaded him into the veterinary van, I watched the mama and her puppies being carefully secured in a separate carrier, the other dogs already in the animal control vehicle with handlers who would ensure their safety and comfort. The cabin that had been a prison was empty now, just evidence markers and the lingering smell of suffering. But standing there in the mountain morning, watching those vehicles carry their precious cargo down to safety and healing, I felt something shift inside me. I'd seen the worst of humanity today, greed and cruelty that could turn living beings into products. But I'd also seen the best of what animals could be. Courage, loyalty, and love that could move mountains. Literally, the hero shepherd had taught me something I'd never forget. Sometimes salvation doesn't come from above. Sometimes it limps up to you on 3 legs, bleeding and broken, and asks you to be brave enough to follow. The investigation that followed over the next few weeks revealed a story that was somehow even more heartbreaking than I'd imagined. I visited the male shepherd, whom the shelter staff had started calling Hero, though I privately called him Mountain for what he'd climbed, every day during his recovery. It was during one of those visits, while sitting beside his kennel as he rested after his 3rd surgery, that Detective Sarah Reeves from the Animal Crimes Unit came to brief me on what they'd uncovered. "You'll want to sit down for this," she said, pulling up a chair beside me. In her hands was a thick file folder, the kind that meant countless hours of investigation and too many ugly truths. Hero lifted his head at the sound of her voice, and I stroked his ears gently. "I'm already sitting. Just tell me." Sarah opened the folder, but I noticed she didn't look at it. She'd already memorized the details, or maybe she just couldn't bear to read them again. We traced Hero's microchip. His registered name is Alpine's Northern Star. He was bred by a reputable kennel in Washington state 5 years ago, sold to a family in Portland for $2,500. By all accounts, he was a beloved family pet. Great with their 2 kids, well-trained, healthy, happy. "Was?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. 2 years ago, The family's house was broken into while they were on vacation. The dog sitter reported that nothing was stolen except Alpine, Hero. Police investigated it as a simple theft, probably someone who wanted a purebred dog. The family was devastated. They searched for months, posted flyers, offered rewards. Eventually, they had to accept he was gone. My hand stilled on Hero's head. They stole him. Those people at the cabin, they stole him from his family. Not directly. We're still piecing it together, but it looks like there's a network. People who steal or rescue purebred dogs, then sell them to operations like the one you found. Hero was probably one of dozens. The couple you arrested, Frank and Linda Carver, they'd been running that cabin operation for at least 3 years. But they're small fish. They were buying dogs from suppliers, breeding them, selling the puppies online through fake family breeder websites. I felt sick. His family. Do they know? Do they know he's alive? Sarah's expression softened slightly, the first hint of good news. We contacted them yesterday. They're driving up from Portland tomorrow. They've been, well, you can imagine. They thought they'd never see him again. I looked down at Hero, sleeping peacefully now with his leg wrapped in bandages and pins holding his shattered bone together. He'd been stolen from a loving home, imprisoned in that cabin, forced to watch as his mate, because that's what the mama shepherd was, suffered alongside him. And when things became desperate, when her life hung in the balance, he'd done the impossible. What about her? I asked quietly. The mama. Do we know her story? Sarah flipped through the file. She's more complicated. No microchip, no registered papers. But based on her age and condition, Dr. Chen estimates she's been breeding continuously for at least 2 years. Multiple litters, back to back, with minimal recovery time between. Her body is… She paused, choosing words carefully. Exhausted. She's got hip dysplasia, dental disease, mammary tumors that will need to be removed. She's maybe 4 years old, Morrison, and her body is like a 10-year-old dog's. Jesus, I breathed. We think she was probably bred specifically for this. Might have been born into it, actually. Some of these operations have been running for generations. They keep the breeding stock hidden, move them between locations, never register them, never take them to vets. They're ghosts. And when they can't produce anymore… Sarah didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I watched Hero's chest rise and fall with steady breathing, and suddenly his escape made even more sense. He knew. He knew what would happen to her if she couldn't deliver those puppies successfully. They would have killed her. Probably. The vet bills alone would have been more than she was worth to them. Easier to dispose of a sick dog and get a new one. Sarah's voice was hard, professional, but I could hear the anger underneath. She'd been working animal crimes for years, but it never got easier. How did he escape? His leg. That injury wasn't fresh when I found him. Sarah pulled out a series of photographs, evidence shots from the cabin. One showed a crate in the back room, larger than the others, with the door bent outward. The metal was twisted, and there were scratch marks on the inside, deep gouges that had worn through the coating to bare metal. Blood stained the edges. We think he worked on that crate for days, maybe weeks. Every time they left, he pushed, pulled, bent the bars. That leg injury? Best we can figure. He broke it while forcing his way out. The door finally gave way. But not before… She gestured to the photo. I felt my throat close up. He'd broken his own leg getting free. The pain must have been excruciating, but he hadn't stopped. He'd kept going, limped through the woods, found the trail, made his way down the mountain until he found me. There's more, Sarah said softly. She pulled out another photo, this one harder to look at. It showed the interior of Hero's crate, and scratched into the metal floor in one corner were marks. Not random, deliberate. Numbers. Days. He'd been counting. 73, Sarah said. 73 marks. We cross-referenced with the carver's purchase records. They bought him 73 days before you found the cabin. He was counting how long he'd been there, how long he'd been trapped. I had to stand up, had to move, had to do something with the rage and grief that was building in my chest. 73 days. 10 weeks of captivity. 10 weeks of watching his mate suffer, of being bred continuously, of living in filth and fear and pain. And through it all, he'd been planning, counting, waiting for his chance. The puppies, I asked suddenly, are they his? Sarah nodded. DNA test confirmed it. All 4 are his biological offspring. So he hadn't just been saving his mate, he'd been saving his children, his family. The word took on new weight, new meaning. This wasn't just animal instinct. This was something deeper, something that transcended species. This was love. Conscious, deliberate, sacrificial love. What happens to them now? I asked. To her and the puppies? The puppies will be fine. They're healthy. And once they're weaned and vetted, they'll be adopted quickly. German Shepherd puppies always are. The mama. Sarah hesitated. That depends. She'll need months of rehabilitation, medical treatment, behavioral assessment. She's terrified of everything right now. Won't let anyone touch her except Dr. Chen. And even that's difficult. The trauma runs deep, Morrison. She may never fully recover psychologically. And Hero? When his family comes tomorrow. That's complicated too. Sarah closed the file. Legally, he's their dog. They never surrendered ownership, and they've been searching for him all this time. They have every right to take him home. But, she looked at Hero, sleeping peacefully in his kennel. He's been through hell. He's not the same dog they lost 2 years ago. And there's the question of her, the mama. They've bonded. Separating them might cause additional trauma to both animals. I sat back down, the weight of it all pressing on my shoulders. Hero had fought so hard to save his family, and now that family might be torn apart anyway. His human family deserved to have him back. They'd loved him, lost him through no fault of their own, mourned him. But his canine family needed him too. The mama shepherd, who'd survived unspeakable abuse, who'd just given birth to his puppies, who'd only known him as her protector in that nightmare. What would it do to her to lose him now? What do you think will happen? I asked Sarah. She shook her head. I don't know. I've seen these situations go both ways. Some families can't handle the trauma their recovered pet has been through. The behavioral issues, the medical needs, the reminder of what was done to them. Others fight to help them heal, no matter how long it takes. She stood up, preparing to leave. You'll meet them tomorrow. The Hendersons, David and Marie, and their kids, Emma and Jack. Dr. Chen asked if you'd be here when they arrive, since you're the one who found him. They want to thank you. After Sarah left, I sat with Hero for another hour, just watching him sleep. His leg was elevated, his breathing was steady, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked peaceful, safe. The weight of survival had finally lifted from his shoulders. Your family's coming tomorrow, I told him softly. Your first family. The ones who loved you before all this. They never stopped looking for you, never stopped hoping. His ear twitched at the sound of my voice, but he didn't wake. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how this story ends, but I promise you this, whatever happens, I'll make sure you're never trapped again. Never hurt again. You've earned your freedom, Mountain. You've earned your peace." In the kennel across the corridor, I could hear the mama shepherd stirring, her puppies making soft nursing sounds. Hero's ear swiveled toward them, even in sleep, still protecting, still listening, still being the father and mate they needed. Tomorrow would bring answers, reunions, and decisions that would shape the rest of these animals' lives. But tonight, in this quiet shelter with the soft sounds of healing all around, I let myself just sit with the miracle of what had happened. A stolen dog who became a father, who broke himself free to save his family, who climbed down a mountain to find help, who trusted a stranger to follow him back into the nightmare he'd just escaped. Hero hadn't just saved his mate and puppies that day, he'd saved something in me too, a belief that courage and love could still triumph, even in the darkest circumstances. That sometimes, when everything seems lost, salvation comes on 3 legs and refuses to give up. I reached through the kennel bars and rested my hand on his head one more time. "Sleep well, Mountain. Tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow, you get to go home." But even as I said it, I wondered, where was home for a dog who'd lived 3 lifetimes in 2 years? With the family who'd lost him, or with the family he'd fought so hard to save? Tomorrow, we'd find out. I arrived at the shelter an hour before the Hendersons were scheduled to come, my stomach twisted in knots I couldn't quite name. Dr. Chen was already there, checking on Hero one last time, adjusting his bandages with the gentle competence I'd come to admire over the past 3 weeks. "How is he?" I asked, though I'd been here just yesterday. I'd been here every day, actually, unable to stay away from the dog who'd changed everything for me. Physically? Healing better than expected. The surgery took, the bone is fusing nicely, and he's putting weight on the leg already. Emotionally? Dr. Chen paused, her hand resting on Hero's head. He's calmer, more settled, but he's still hypervigilant. Watch his eyes. He's always tracking everyone's movements, always listening. He's learned that safety is temporary, that the people you trust can disappear or hurt you. That's not something that heals with pins and antibiotics. As if to prove her point, Hero's gaze shifted to the door as footsteps approached in the hallway. His entire body tensed, ready to move despite his injury. Always ready. Always watching. "The Hendersons are good people," Dr. Chen said quietly, reading my concern. "I spoke with them on the phone twice. They understand he's been through trauma. They're prepared for this to be difficult." "Prepared and ready are different things," I said, more harshly than I intended. Dr. Chen gave me a long look. "You've gotten attached." He led me up a mountain. I delivered his puppies. I arrested the people who tortured him. I crossed my arms defensively. "Yeah, I'm attached. Wouldn't you be?" "I am attached, Morrison. I'm attached to every animal that comes through here. That's why I have to trust that sometimes the best thing is letting them go home." She checked her watch. "They'll be here in 20 minutes. I'm going to check on Mama and the puppies. You want to sit with him?" I nodded, and she left us alone. I opened Hero's kennel and sat down inside with him. Something I'd been doing for weeks now, just sitting, letting him know he wasn't alone. He shifted closer, resting his head on my leg, and I felt the weight of his trust like a physical thing. "I met you on the worst day of your life," I told him, "and you were still braver than anyone I've ever known. You were broken and bleeding and terrified, and you still led me back up that mountain because your family needed you. That's the kind of courage most people only pretend to have." His tail moved slightly, not quite a wag, but an acknowledgement. Your first family is coming today. The people who raised you, who loved you before all this hell. They've been looking for you for 2 years, Mountain. 2 years of not knowing, of hoping, of probably imagining the worst. And now they get you back. And it's a miracle. It really is. My voice cracked. But you've got another family now, too. She's right across the hall with your babies. And she's just as broken as you are. And I don't know. I don't know how this works. I don't know how to make this right for everyone. The sound of car doors closing outside made Hero's head lift sharply. Then voices. Excited, anxious, young voices. Kids. His ears swiveled toward the sound, and something changed in his expression. Something I couldn't quite read. Dr. Chen appeared at the kennel. They're here. You ready? I stood up, brushing off my uniform, and Hero stood too, three-legged, bandaged but standing tall, waiting. I clipped a lead to his collar, more for protocol than control, and slowly walked him out into the corridor toward the shelter's visiting room. The door was open, and I could see them before they saw us. A man in his early 40s, graying at the temples, his arm around a woman with tears already streaming down her face. And 2 kids, a girl about 12 and a boy maybe 9, both clutching old photographs of a younger, healthier German shepherd. Their Alpine, their Northern Star. Then the little boy looked up and saw us. Alpine! The name came out as a sob, and he started forward, but his father caught him. Slow, Jack. Remember what the doctor said. He's been hurt. We have to be gentle. But Hero had frozen, completely frozen. His entire body went rigid, and for a horrible moment I thought he might bolt, might panic, might not recognize them at all. 2 years was a lifetime in dog years. These could be strangers to him now. Then the little girl spoke, her voice shaking. Alpine, it's me. It's Emma. Do you remember? Do you remember us? Hero's head tilted slightly, and I watched something extraordinary happen. His ears, which had been pinned back in anxiety, slowly lifted. His tail, which had been tucked, began to move. Tentatively at first, then faster. And then he made a sound I'd never heard from him before, a whine of pure, desperate recognition. Let him go, I said softly, unclipping the lead. Hero moved forward in a lurching run limp, his injured leg barely touching the ground, and the family fell to their knees as he reached them. The reunion was chaos, crying, laughing, hands in fur, a dog trying to lick every face at once while making sounds that were half whine, half cry. He remembered. After everything he'd been through, after 2 years and unspeakable trauma, he remembered his first family. Marie Henderson looked up at me through her tears. You found him. You saved him. How can we ever... She couldn't finish, overcome with emotion. He saved himself, I said, my own voice thick. I just followed, where he led. David Henderson stood, offering his hand, his other arm still around his daughter, who was buried in Hero's, Alpine's fur. The detective told us what he did, what he survived. We can't believe he's really here. We thought... He stopped, swallowing hard. We thought someone had taken him for fighting, or worse. Every day for 2 years. We imagined. He's here now, I said. He's going to be okay. The leg will heal. Dr. Chen can give you all his medical records, his medication schedule, his follow-up appointments. We'll do whatever it takes, Marie said firmly, finally standing but keeping one hand on Alpine's head. Physical therapy, behavioral therapy, whatever he needs. We've got a vet back home who specializes in trauma cases. We've already talked to her. We're prepared for this to take time. Jack, the little boy, was pressed against Alpine's side, his face buried in fur. "I knew you were alive," he whispered. "Everyone said to stop hoping. But I knew. I knew you'd come back." And watching this family made whole again, I should have felt happy. I did feel happy. But I also felt the weight of what I hadn't told them yet, what they needed to know before they took him home. "There's something else," I said, and my tone made everyone look up. "Something you need to see before you make any final decisions." Dr. Chen was waiting in the doorway, having anticipated this moment. She led us down the corridor, the family confused, Alpine limping alongside them but constantly looking back at me, to the kennel area where Mama and the puppies were housed. The Mama Shepherd was curled in her bed, and the 4 3-week-old puppies were tumbling over each other in their play area. Bigger now, healthier, starting to look like real dogs instead of tiny potatoes with legs. Marie gasped at the sight of them. "Are those?" "His," I confirmed. "All 4 of them. And that's their mother. She was with him in that cabin. She was dying when I found her, and he escaped and found me to save her. To save them." The moment Alpine saw the Mama Shepherd, he pulled forward, whining urgently. Dr. Chen opened the kennel door, and he went straight to her, nuzzling her face, checking on her with the same careful attention I'd seen him show every day for 3 weeks. The mama lifted her head and pressed against him, and the puppies, recognizing their father, immediately tumbled over to him, climbing on his good legs, yipping excitedly. The Henderson family stood in silence, watching this second family that Alpine had built in his captivity. "Oh, God," Marie whispered. "Oh, David, look at them." Emma, the daughter, had tears streaming down her face again. "He's a dad. Alpine's a dad." "What happens to them?" David asked, his voice strained. "To the mother and the puppies?" Dr. Chen stepped forward. "The puppies will be adopted once they're fully weaned and vaccinated, probably in another 3 weeks. They're healthy and well-adjusted, considering. They'll go to good homes. I'll make sure of it personally. The mama—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "She's going to need extensive rehabilitation. Months, maybe longer. She's terrified of people. Won't eat unless someone she trusts is present. Won't leave her kennel. Alpine is the only thing that's kept her stable these past weeks. Without him, I'm honestly not sure she'll continue to progress." The weight of that hung in the air. I watched David and Marie exchange a long look, the kind of wordless communication that comes from years of marriage. Then David looked at his kids, at Alpine pressed against the Mama Shepherd, at the puppies climbing over their father's back. "What are you thinking?" Marie asked her husband softly. "I'm thinking," David said slowly, "that we got Alpine back through a miracle. But he's not ours anymore. Not entirely. He's got another family now, one he fought for, one he nearly died for." He looked at me. "What would you do, officer? If he was your dog?" The question hit me harder than I expected. "I'd ask him what he wants," I said quietly. "I know that sounds crazy, but he's earned the right to choose. He's been through hell and made impossible decisions to survive. Maybe we owe it to him to respect that he knows what he needs now." Marie knelt down in front of the kennel, watching Alpine with his mate and children. "Can we have some time? Just some time to talk as a family?" "Of course," Dr. Chen said. "Take all the time you need. I'll be in my office when you're ready." We left them there, the human family that had lost Alpine, watching the canine family he'd built in the darkness. As we walked away, I heard Emma's voice. "Dad, what if we—" But the rest was too quiet to make out. In Dr. Chen's office, we waited in silence. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, after nearly 40 minutes, there was a knock on the door. The Henderson family stood there, Alpine sitting calmly at David's side. Jack was holding one of the puppies, a little female with Alpine's markings. "We've made a decision," David said. "Actually, Alpine made a decision, and we're respecting it." My heart was pounding as I waited for him to continue. When we tried to leave, just to see how he'd react, he wouldn't come. He pulled back toward her kennel, toward the mother and the puppies. He wanted to stay with them. David's voice was thick with emotion but steady. 2 years ago, someone stole our dog. But the dog who came back, he's not just ours anymore. He's a father. He's a protector. He's got responsibilities he takes seriously. Marie stepped forward. "We're going back to Portland to talk to our vet and make arrangements. We're going to come back in 2 weeks, and if Dr. Chen approves, we want to adopt them. All of them. The mother and all 4 puppies. We've got the space. We've got 5 acres. And if Alpine needs his family to heal, then his family comes home with him." I felt something break open in my chest. Relief, gratitude, hope, all flooding in at once. Emma was crying again, but smiling. "We already named the puppies. This one," she held up the one Jack was carrying, "is Hope, because she was born in the worst place but survived anyway. And Alpine's coming home with his whole family." Dr. Chen stood up, professional composure cracking into a genuine smile. "I'll need to assess the mama's progress over the next 2 weeks, make sure she's stable enough for the transition. But if she continues improving, especially with Alpine's support, then yes, we can make this work." David shook her hand, then mine. "Thank you, both of you, for finding him, for saving them, for understanding what he needed." As they prepared to leave, promising to call every day, to visit next weekend, to bring supplies for the puppies, Alpine approached me one last time. He sat at my feet, his intelligent eyes meeting mine, and I swear I saw understanding there. Gratitude. And maybe goodbye. For now. I knelt down and held his face gently in my hands. "You did good, Mountain. You saved them all, and now you get to keep them. You get your old family and your new family. You get everything you fought for." My voice broke. "You deserve this. You deserve all of it." His tail wagged. A real wag this time, strong and sure, and he licked my face once before turning back to his human family. As I watched them walk out together, Alpine limping but happy, the Hendersons clustered around him, already making plans for the future. I felt Dr. Chen's hand on my shoulder. "You know what the best part is?" she said quietly. "What?" "In 2 weeks, when they come back, we're not just sending one traumatized dog home to heal. We're sending 6 survivors home together. 6 lives saved because one dog refused to give up, and one handler was brave enough to follow him into the mountains." I wiped my eyes quickly, not bothering to hide the tears anymore. 7 lives, I corrected. He saved me too. Reminded me why I do this job, why any of this matters. Through the window, I watched the Hendersons' car pull away, and I knew that in 2 weeks I'd be here to watch them leave again. This time with a complete family, healed and whole, and heading home together. Hero had climbed down a mountain to save his family. Now, finally, his family would be able to save him right back. The 2 weeks that followed were a blur of activity, emotion, and painstaking detective work. While Hero, I still couldn't bring myself to call him Alpine consistently, recovered with his family visiting every other day, Detective Reeves and her team were unraveling a network that stretched far beyond one cabin in the mountains. I wasn't officially assigned to the case. Animal crimes fell under a different division, and my role as a canine handler meant I should have moved on to my regular duties. But Sarah Reeves kept pulling me in, kept asking for my input, and I couldn't walk away. Not when there were still so many unanswered questions. Not when there might be more dogs suffering in other cabins, other basements, other hidden hells. It was day 4 after the Hendersons' visit when Sarah called me into the station. "We got the Carvers to talk," she said without preamble, spreading photographs and documents across the conference room table. Well, Linda Carver talked. Frank's lawyer shut him down, but Linda— Sarah shook her head. I think seeing those dogs rescued broke something in her. Or maybe she finally saw a way out. Either way, she's cooperating. I looked at the photos. More cabins, more locations, more faces I didn't recognize. How big is this? Bigger than we thought. The Carvers were part of a network operating across 5 states. They called themselves suppliers, middlemen between the people who steal or source the dogs and the people who run the actual breeding operations. That cabin you found? That was one of at least 15 similar locations. 15! The number hit me like a physical blow. 15 cabins full of dogs like Hero and his mate? Not all of them are still active. Some have been shut down, either by authorities or because they moved locations. But we've confirmed at least 8 that are currently operational. Sarah pulled out a map with red pins marking locations across Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Northern California. This is a multi-million-dollar operation, Morrison. Premium puppies sold through legitimate-looking websites, fake social media accounts showing happy family breeders, even fake veterinary records. They've been doing this for at least a decade. I sank into a chair, trying to process it. A decade. How many dogs? We're estimating hundreds, maybe over 1,000 when you count the puppies sold. Sarah sat across from me, and I could see the exhaustion in her face. She'd probably been working around the clock since the arrest. But here's what's important. Linda gave us names, locations, and most critically, she gave us their schedule. These operations move the breeding dogs regularly to avoid detection. But there's a central hub, a place where they bring dogs for veterinary care when they absolutely have to, where they coordinate distribution, where the main organizers operate from. Where? A property outside of Spokane. 20 acres, registered to a shell company. But we've traced it back to a man named Richard Voss. He's the architect of this whole thing. Started it 15 years ago with a legitimate breeding business, then realized he could make more money by cutting corners, eliminating overhead, treating the dogs like livestock instead of animals. Linda says he's got at least 30 breeding dogs on that property right now, plus puppies, plus temporary holdings for dogs they're moving between locations. 30 dogs, right now, suffering the way Hero and his mate had suffered. "When do we move?" I asked. Sarah gave me a long look. "That's why I called you in. This is a multi-agency operation. FBI's involved because of the interstate trafficking, state police, animal control from 3 counties, and specialized rescue teams. We're coordinating a simultaneous raid on all 8 confirmed locations tomorrow at dawn. But the Spokane property, that's the big one. That's where we'll find evidence to bring down the entire network. And they specifically requested a K9 handler with field experience be part of the entry team. They requested me. I requested you. You've earned this, Morrison. You found the thread that's unraveling this whole operation. You should be there when we shut it down." She slid a tactical briefing across the table. "But I need you to understand what you're walking into. These aren't the Carvers, small-time operators running one cabin. Richard Voss has resources, connections, and, according to Linda, he's unstable. When the Idaho operation got shut down 3 years ago, he allegedly executed 6 dogs himself, rather than let them be seized. He sees these animals as property, as inventory, and he'll destroy them rather than lose them. The thought made my blood run cold. He'd kill them? Even knowing we're coming? We don't know for certain, but Linda seemed genuinely terrified when she talked about him. Said he's gotten paranoid over the years, especially after a few close calls with authorities. The property has security, cameras, and she thinks he keeps weapons on site." Sarah leaned forward. "This isn't a welfare check, Morrison. This is a tactical operation. If you're coming, you need to be prepared for it to go sideways." I thought about Hero limping down that mountain, about the mama shepherd too terrified to leave her kennel, about 4 puppies who'd been born into nightmare but had somehow survived. I thought about 30 more dogs waiting in Spokane, counting days in their cages, losing hope. "I'm in," I said. "What do you need me to do?" The briefing that followed was extensive and sobering. The raid would involve 40 personnel across multiple teams: entry team, perimeter security, animal control and veterinary support, evidence collection, and tactical backup in case of armed resistance. My role would be with the entry team, specifically to assess and secure any dogs we found, determine medical priorities, and coordinate with the veterinary teams waiting outside. We go in at 5:47 a.m., the tactical commander, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, explained during the full briefing that evening. Dawn is at 6:15, so we'll have just enough light to move but darkness for cover. We have architectural plans of the main building. It's a converted barn with an attached residence. Linda's intel suggests the breeding dogs are kept in the barn section, puppies in a separate climate-controlled building behind it, and Voss lives in the attached residence. He pulled up aerial photographs on the screen. The property is fenced, gated, with cameras at all entry points, but they're standard security cameras, nothing sophisticated. Our tech team will loop the feeds at 5:45, giving us a 2-minute window to get into position before anyone notices the disruption. Perimeter team establishes containment first, then entry team breaches simultaneously at the barn and residence. Questions? An FBI agent raised her hand. Do we have confirmation Voss is on site? We have a vehicle registered to him parked at the residence as of 3 hours ago. Thermal imaging shows heat signatures consistent with one person in the residence, multiple signatures in the barn. We're assuming he's there, but prepared if he's not. What about other suspects? Someone else asked. Linda identified 2 regular employees, Marcus Chen and Olivia Warren, who help with daily operations. We have warrants for both, but uncertain if they're on property. Expect 1 to 3 suspects maximum. The briefing continued for another hour, covering entry procedures, communication protocols, what to do if we encountered resistance. By the end, my hands were shaking slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of what we were about to do. Sarah found me afterward as I was reviewing my assigned sectors. You okay? I keep thinking about what happens if we're too late. If he gets wind of this and... I couldn't finish the sentence. We've kept this tight. Only essential personnel know about tomorrow. Linda's in protective custody with no outside communication. We've monitored Voss's phone and internet. No indication he suspects anything. We're as prepared as we can be. And if he starts killing dogs the moment we breach? Sarah's face went hard. Then we stop him. Fast. That's why tactical is going in first. Why we're coordinating entry points. We've got shooters positioned with clear sight lines if needed. But Morrison, she put a hand on my arm. We're going to save them. Just like you saved Hero and his family. We're going to end this. I nodded, wanting desperately to believe her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Hero's eyes when I first found him, kept hearing the mama shepherd's whimpers during labor, kept imagining 30 more dogs waiting in darkness for a salvation they had no reason to believe would come. At 3:30 a.m., my alarm went off. I was already awake. The drive to Spokane took 2 hours. We met at a staging area 5 miles from the target property, an abandoned warehouse where the tactical teams did final equipment checks and the veterinary units prepared their mobile stations. Dr. Chen was there, along with 4 other vets and a dozen vet techs, setting up triage areas and stocking supplies. "Big day," she said when she saw me, her face serious but determined. "Biggest I've ever been part of," I admitted. "Those dogs in there, they've been waiting for this. Some of them for years. Today, their waiting ends." She handed me a tactical vest, modified with pockets for emergency veterinary supplies. "You find them, you assess them, you get them out. We'll handle the rest." At 5:30 a.m., we loaded into vehicles, blacked-out SUVs and vans, moving without lights until we were a mile out. The sun was still below the horizon, the world that pre-dawn gray that felt suspended between night and day, the same color it had been when I first saw Hero. "All teams, radio check," Lieutenant Webb's voice came through my earpiece. One by one, teams confirmed ready status. Perimeter establishing position. Tech team standing by for camera loop. Medical holding at staging point. Entry Team 1, ready. Entry Team 2, ready. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. At 5:45, we stopped a quarter mile from the property and proceeded on foot, moving quickly and quietly through the pre-dawn darkness. I could see the outline of buildings ahead, a large barn structure, a smaller building behind it, the residence attached to the side. Camera loop in 3, 2, 1, execute. Somewhere in a van a mile away, a tech operator pressed a button, and the security cameras began showing footage from an hour earlier. Everything quiet. Everything normal. "All teams, move." We rushed forward, 40 people converging on the property from multiple directions. Perimeter team hit the fence line, cutting through and spreading out to contain the entire area. Entry teams split, one heading for the residence, mine heading for the barn. The barn doors were locked, but our breach specialist had them open in seconds. The smell hit me immediately. Animals, waste, fear. The same suffocating atmosphere I'd encountered in that mountain cabin, but multiplied. Worse. "Clear the space," Webb commanded, and Tactical moved through quickly. Flashlights cutting through darkness, checking corners, looking for threats. "Residence breach in 3, 2, 1. I heard through the radio, followed by shouting, commands, and then, "Suspect in custody. Single male, non-compliant, but secured." They had Voss. "Barn is clear of suspects," Webb called out. "Animal control, you're up. Do your jobs." I moved deeper into the barn with my flashlight, and what I saw will haunt me for the rest of my life. Rows of cages, stacked 2 and 3 high, stretching the length of the building. And in nearly every cage, eyes reflected back at me. German Shepherds, Golden Retrievers, Labrador Retrievers, breeds I recognized, and some I didn't. All silent. All watching with that same terrible resignation I'd seen in the mama shepherd's eyes. "Oh, God," I whispered. There were so many. Way more than 30. "Count and assess," Sarah's voice came from behind me, steady and professional, though I could hear the strain. We need numbers and medical priorities. I started moving down the rows, marking cages, noting conditions. Female shepherd, cage A1. Emaciated, mammary tumors, immediate medical. Male lab, cage A2, appears stable, secondary assessment. Female golden, cage A3. My voice caught. Heavily pregnant, in distress, immediate medical. The count went on, and on, and on. 47 dogs, not 30. 47 breeding animals in various states of neglect, illness, and trauma. Plus, in the second building, 63 puppies ranging from newborn to 12 weeks old. 110 lives waiting to be saved. And as dawn broke over Spokane, as veterinary teams rushed in and began the massive operation of triaging and transporting, as evidence teams photographed and documented every cage, every chart, every piece of proof of this systematic cruelty, I stood in that barn and watched salvation arrive for dogs who'd stopped believing it existed. "We got them," Sarah said quietly beside me, watching a vet tech carefully lift a trembling golden retriever from her cage. "We actually got them all." But even as I nodded, even as relief flooded through me, I knew the truth. We'd gotten these dogs. But there were more. There were always more. More cabins, more networks, more people who saw lives as products and suffering as acceptable overhead. The mystery of what happened in that mountain cabin was solved. The network was unraveling. The evidence we gathered would lead to prosecutions, convictions, and systemic changes to how breeding operations were monitored and regulated. But standing in that barn at dawn, surrounded by 47 pairs of eyes that had finally seen hope return, I knew this wasn't an ending. It was barely even a beginning. Hero had led me up a mountain to save his family. Now, somehow, I had to figure out how to save all the others. The ones still waiting, still hoping, still counting days in cages I hadn't found yet. The work was just beginning. And I wasn't walking away until it was done. The rescue operation in Spokane took 12 hours. 12 hours of carefully documenting each animal, providing emergency medical care, loading traumatized dogs into transport vehicles, and preserving evidence that would be crucial for prosecution. I worked until my hands were shaking from exhaustion, and my voice was hoarse from talking softly to terrified animals, telling them over and over that they were safe now, that the nightmare was ending. It was nearly 6 p.m. when I finally climbed into my vehicle to head home. My phone had been buzzing periodically throughout the day, but I'd ignored it, too focused on the work. Now, sitting in the parking lot of the staging area, I pulled it out and saw a dozen missed calls. Most were from the station, a few from Sarah, but 3 were from a number I didn't recognize with a Portland area code. I called it back, too tired to wonder who it was. "Morrison?" David Henderson's voice came through, tight with emotion. "Thank God. We've been trying to reach you all day." My stomach dropped. Something was wrong. "Is it Hero? Did something happen?" No, he's fine. We're all fine. Better than fine, actually. We're at the shelter right now. Dr. Chen called us this morning and said the mama, they've been calling her Grace, had a major breakthrough. She's eating on her own. She let one of the vet techs touch her without panicking, and Dr. Chen thinks she's ready. Morrison, she's ready to come home. They're all ready to come home. Eder. The words took a moment to penetrate my exhausted brain. Today? They can leave today? Tomorrow, actually. Dr. Chen wants to do final health checks in the morning, make sure all the puppies have their vaccinations, do the paperwork. But yes, tomorrow we're bringing them all home to Portland. And Morrison. David's voice cracked slightly. We wanted you to be there. You saved them. You delivered those puppies. You should be there when they go home. Will you come?" I looked around the staging area, veterinary teams still processing the last of the rescued dogs, evidence being loaded into trucks, exhausted personnel debriefing. I'd been awake for nearly 20 hours. I'd just been part of the largest animal cruelty raid in state history, and I had reports to file and testimony to prepare. "What time?" I asked. 10 a.m. "We know it's a lot to ask, but—" "I'll be there," I said. I wouldn't miss it for anything. That night, I slept for 12 hours straight, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that comes after physical and emotional exhaustion. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through my windows, and for the first moment in weeks, I felt something close to peace. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. 110 animals rescued. A decade-long criminal network dismantled. And today, 7 survivors were going home together. I arrived at the shelter at 9:30, giving myself time to say proper goodbyes. Dr. Chen met me at the door, looking tired but radiant. "You heard?" she asked. "David called. Grace is ready. Come see for yourself." She led me to the kennel area, and what I saw stopped me in my tracks. Grace's kennel door was open. Not just unlocked, fully open. And Grace herself was lying in the corridor, her 4 puppies tumbling over her and each other, playing with a confidence and joy I'd never seen in them before. When she saw me, Grace lifted her head, and her tail wagged. Actually, wagged. "She came out on her own this morning," Dr. Chen said softly. "Just walked out into the corridor like she'd been doing it her whole life. It's like something clicked. She finally understood she was safe, that the cage wasn't a trap, that the open door wasn't a trick. She was free, and she chose to believe it." I knelt down slowly, extending my hand. Grace sniffed it cautiously, then, miracle of miracles, pressed her head against my palm, asking to be petted, trusting me. The puppies immediately swarmed me, climbing on my legs, chewing my shoelaces, being exactly what 3-week-old puppies should be. Goofy, fearless, and full of life. "Where's Hero?" I asked. "Exercise yard," with one of the techs. "He's been doing short walks, building strength. His leg is healing beautifully. He'll probably always have a slight limp, but Dr. Santos thinks he'll have full function eventually. Want to see him?" We walked outside, and there he was, my mountain climber, my impossible hero, trotting slowly around the yard, his tail high, his gait more confident than I'd ever seen it. When he spotted me, he broke into a loping run-walk, covering the distance between us in seconds and nearly knocking me over with his enthusiasm. "Hey, Mountain," I said, holding his face and looking into those intelligent eyes. "Big day, huh? You're going home. Really home. With everyone you love." His tail wagged so hard his whole back end moved, and he pressed against me like he was trying to merge our bodies into one. For a dog who'd been so reserved, so controlled in his affections during his recovery, this was everything. The Henderson family arrived at 10 on the dot, their SUV pulling into the shelter parking lot, followed by a larger van. They'd had to rent something bigger to accommodate everyone. The kids tumbled out first, Emma and Jack racing for the door, and Hero's ears perked up at the sound of their voices even from the yard. The reunion in the shelter lobby was chaos again. Happy chaos this time. Hero was surrounded by his human family. Grace cautiously approached with Dr. Chen's encouragement, and the puppies had no fear at all, immediately climbing on the kids and licking their faces. "This is Hope," Emma announced, holding up the puppy they'd named during their first visit. "And this one is Courage. We call him Ridge. And this one is Star, because Dad says Alpine means of the mountains, and stars guide people home. And the littlest one is Joy, because that's what they all are. Hope, Ridge, Star, and Joy. 4 puppies born in darkness, named for light. Marie was crying, again or still, I wasn't sure, as she carefully approached Grace. "Hello, sweet girl," she said softly, letting Grace sniff her hand. "You're part of our family now. You're safe, you're loved, and we're never going to let anything hurt you again." Grace looked at Hero as if asking permission, and he moved closer to Marie, showing Grace it was safe. Slowly, tentatively, Grace allowed Marie to pet her head, then her neck. Then finally she leaned into the touch, accepting this new human as part of her pack. David was handling the paperwork with Dr. Chen. Adoption contracts, medical records, care instructions, emergency contacts. The shelter had waived all adoption fees, considering the circumstances, but David had insisted on making a substantial donation to help with the other dogs still in recovery. "This place saved our family," he said firmly. "This is the least we can do." As they prepared to load everyone into the vehicles, Dr. Chen pulled me aside. "There's something you should see before they go." She handed me a folder. "This came through this morning. The DNA results we ran on all the dogs from the Spokane raid." I opened it, scanning the technical language until I found what she was showing me. "Grace has siblings? In the raid?" "A brother and a sister. They were in the Spokane facility. She was probably bred there initially, then moved to the mountain cabin when they needed to expand operations. Her siblings are still there, both in similar condition to what Grace was in when you found her." My throat tightened. "What happens to them?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Dr. Chen glanced at the Henderson family, now loading puppies into carriers. "In cases like this, when we find related animals, we try to keep them together if possible. It helps with rehabilitation, familiar sense, shared history, even traumatic history. The Hendersons are taking Grace home to heal, but her siblings," she paused, "they need homes too. And they need homes with people who understand what these animals have been through. You want me to adopt them? I want you to consider it. You have the training, the experience, the space. You've worked with traumatized animals before. And Morrison," she looked at me seriously, "you're different after this case. I can see it. You're not just doing a job anymore. This is personal now." She was right. Everything had changed the moment Hero limped into my life. I'd spent 8 years as a canine handler, working with dogs, training them, respecting them. But I'd always maintained professional distance. They were partners, not pets, tools, not family. But standing there, watching Hero being loaded into the Henderson van with his mate and children, watching a family made whole by courage and love and impossible determination, I knew Dr. Chen was right. It was personal now. And those 2 dogs in Spokane, Grace's siblings, who'd suffered just as much as she had, they deserved their own mountain climber, their own impossible rescue. "Send me their files," I said. "Let me meet them. And, yeah, let's see if I can give them what the Hendersons are giving Hero and Grace." Dr. Chen smiled. "I'll make the arrangements." Outside, the vehicles were loaded. Hero and Grace rode in the main SUV with David and Marie, the puppies secured in carriers in the back, with the kids watching over them. Before they left, the whole family gathered around me one last time. "We named the rescue fund after him," David said, showing me his phone. There was a GoFundMe page titled "Alpine's Legacy: Saving Animals from Abuse." We've already raised $50,000. It's going to help fund prosecutions, rescue operations, rehabilitation for animals recovered from these networks. Your work in Spokane, it's going to help hundreds of animals, maybe thousands. It wasn't just me, I protested. It was a team effort. It started with you, Emma interrupted. It started because you followed Alpine when anyone else would have just called animal control. It started because you were brave enough to go up that mountain. Jack stepped forward and hugged me suddenly, fiercely. Thank you for saving our dog, and his family, and all the other dogs. You're a hero too. I hugged him back, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As they drove away, Hero pressed his face against the window, watching me until they turned the corner and disappeared from sight. Going home. Finally, really, truly going home. Dr. Chen stood beside me, both of us watching the empty road. You know what the best part of this job is? She asked. What? Moments like this, when everything works out, when the good guys win and the innocent get saved and families get put back together. It doesn't happen often enough. But when it does, she smiled, it makes all the hard days worth it. I nodded, thinking about the 47 dogs still in recovery from Spokane, about Grace's siblings waiting for homes, about the other networks still operating, about all the work still to be done. It's not over, though, I said. This case, maybe. But there are more. There are always more. Then we'll get them too, Dr. Chen said simply. One cabin at a time, one mountain at a time, one impossible rescue at a time. That's how this works. We don't save everyone all at once. We save the ones right in front of us, and then we move on to the next ones. She was right. Hero had taught me that. You don't save everyone by planning the perfect strategy or waiting for the ideal moment. You save who you can, when you can, with whatever strength you have left. Even if you're broken, even if you're scared, even if the mountain is impossibly high. You start climbing anyway. 2 days later, I drove to Spokane to meet Grace's siblings, a male they'd temporarily named Chance, and a female called Mercy. They were in rough shape, similar to how Grace had been, but when I sat with them, spoke softly to them, told them about their sister who'd learned to trust again, who'd learned to walk out of her cage and believe in safety, I saw something flicker in their eyes. Not hope yet, but maybe the possibility of hope. And that was enough to start with. I filled out the adoption paperwork that afternoon. 2 more survivors coming home to heal. 2 more lives saved because one dog had been brave enough to climb down a mountain, and one handler had been foolish enough, or wise enough, to follow. The rescue mission that had started with Hero wasn't over. It was expanding, and I was ready to see it through, wherever it led. One mountain at a time. Some stories don't end. They simply rise into new terrain. Months after the Spokane operation, the wounds began to close, both on bodies and on spirits. Hero, alpine to his family, regained most of the strength in his injured leg. Grace learned to run again, first unsure, then free, the wind parting gently around her in the open fields of her new home. Their 4 puppies grew bold and bright, turning every acre into a world of discovery. And when I visited them, what struck me most wasn't the joy. It was the silence. A different silence from the cabin. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of peace. Back at my own place, Chance and Mercy, Grace's siblings, walked a similar road. Every day brought a small victory. The first step outside without trembling, the first touch without retreat, the first look that said, I trust you. I had adopted them as if adopting a responsibility, a calling. And I realized something simple but profound. I wasn't saving them. They were saving me, reminding me why the fight mattered in a world that often pretends not to see. The criminal network we dismantled sparked national reform. New laws, new oversight, new task forces. The Alpine's legacy fund surpassed every expectation, financing rescues across multiple states. People spoke about the dog who came down the mountain, but few understood what it meant to follow a wounded animal into danger simply because he asked you to. I understood. Sarah understood. Dr. Chen understood. We all knew that every successful raid stood on the graves of countless silent failures. The dogs never found, the barns never reported, the cabins still hidden in the mist. Whenever the work became too heavy, I returned to the mountains. I walked the same kinds of trails where Hero first appeared and let the wind tell its own stories. If I closed my eyes, I could still hear that first bark, sharp, urgent, unignorable, calling me towards something impossible. And I understood that the sound wasn't meant to fade. It was meant to guide. Hero taught me that strength isn't measured by who leads, but by who refuses to give up. That loyalty is not obedience, but love in its bravest form. And that some mountains aren't climbed with legs, but with faith. Faith that the next step matters, even when the summit is hidden. Today, when someone asks why I continue this work, why I keep climbing literal and figurative mountains for animals most people will never meet, I simply smile and say, because there are still dogs waiting, and because once one of them waited for me. So at dawn, when the world holds its breath between night and day, I pack my gear, check my radio, and start walking again. One step, one breath, one life at a time, one mountain at a time.